first meeting of the Board of Selectmen to order here, 6:16. Please rise to the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Alrighty, here we are. Mr. Tanzini?
Last week you interviewed Jenny Creamer of Creamer Law and Tom Harrington of Miaris and Harrington, and in that interview learned that a member of their team needed to withdraw because of an objection from another client.
Right.
They proposed to you the name of Murphy, Toomey, Hess, Levine, and 7 other names, whatever the heck it was. And we were able to get you that package over the weekend. At the same time, over the weekend, I should say Friday, and then over the weekend and today, I received supplemental information from present town council that I would like to take a few moments and speak to, if I might, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely, please do.
So the first, if you can pass those all the way down, please. Oh, those are two-sided. Yep, those, if y'all can pass those two all the way down, and then the others are,
This is one set.
Thank you.
yep,
And this too?
yep,
And then that one's yours.
and that should be 4 for each of you, yes?
No?
Yes?
Yep.
The first one was one-sided, so it's 2 pages. All the others
And we've been a little bit aware of this since about mid-January. The firm of Deutsch Williams is ceasing operations on March 31, 2018, and dissolving. And a number of the lawyers are leaving that firm. And so this formally notifies us of that event, what's going on, and where we want our files to go to. At the same time, Mr. Durensis spoke to me passionately about his desire to continue to represent the town, a belief that this new firm will be leaner, will be nimbler in responding, and how much he felt that he'd invested in the town and his desire to continue on. And he submitted the name of someone. Their labor attorneys are leaving them en masse. So he's bringing someone back that had been with the firm previously. And I told Mr. Durensis that as a courtesy to his past service, if he provided it to me this morning, I would print out and make the board aware of his revised proposal for the new firm that will be coming into place. They're going to be down in the financial district in Boston, over on Devonshire, I believe. I did have an opportunity to speak about 4 pages in. You're going to see the resume of the person that would now handle their labor matters, and I did have a chance to speak to them at some length. I did indicate to him that it was unfortunate that these conversations were happening relatively late in the process, but that I would make you aware of the firm being dissolved, the new firm that's starting, who would be with it, and the like. So we have the revised proposal from Miaris and Harrington to include Catherine Hesse. We have the Jenny Kramer. They are, as I've mentioned to you, the opposite sides of the spectrum. The references on both of them limited somewhat on Ms. Kramer because of the practice that she maintains. Expansive on Mr. Harrington's side. The references were all good, highly complimentary. And we have this revision from present town council following upon the heels of the current firm being dissolved. As I said, I've known about this since late January, but just didn't feel I should, although I've spoken to somebody individually, I didn't feel that it was something I should make public, because we hadn't received formal notification of it.
Right.
And until having received this letter, I'm really not in the gossip mill business. So I don't know if you want to, as a courtesy to Mr. Durensis, wait till Wednesday night. We could do another, 6:15, 6:20. You could make your final decision, or whether the board wishes to make that decision this evening. And I will say, Mr. Chairman, no matter whatever you decide, we do have current litigation in process. Ms. Saliant, I believe that's the correct pronunciation of her name, has been handling that, and I would recommend that we let her finish that out. She did the day mill for us. She's done the initial
Okay.
response on that litigation. And I think that, whatever you do, we should leave that case with her, at least for the time being.
Okay. Anybody have anything?
So did he actually submit a proposal, or? Because this isn't in the same form as the other ones.
This
that we
is,
have.
given that we had this conversation on Friday, this is basically it, that we have in front of us at this point.
So he didn't want to formally submit anything because they were possibly changing?
Well, he did submit, there were 4
Oh, okay.
submissions.
And there was no,
And at the time, the firm simply did not rise to the top. We had the 2 that you interviewed. We had
Mhm.
Deutsch Williams,
I'd like to.
and some of the people that were part of that package had actually were about to leave the firm.
Mhm.
And we had Koppelman and Page. And in reviewing the 4 firms, it was Kramer Law and Miaris and Harrington that appeared to be the 2 most appropriate to the needs.
Okay.
I would like to make a decision.
Would you like to make a decision on the legal town council, or do you want to wait?
No, I would like to make a decision based on who came to interview, but I agree with Carter that we should let Ms. Salient finish the litigation. That's already in play.
Okay. Doug?
That's just my opinion.
Yep, that's how
Are
it
we gonna
works.
go down the line
Yep.
with opinions? A little late in the game for this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine either way, since, Cam's not here.
Oh,
I think so,
sorry.
yeah.
We can wait until Wednesday, and I think Cameron should be here. I'm sorry.
That's
I
what,
think,
no,
I didn't
you know,
see the
both
empty
of
chair.
both of the candidates that we interviewed,
Yeah.
have merit. Each one, I think, has different merits.
Mhm.
I'm still grappling which one I would vote for, but,
Let's do Wednesday.
yeah.
then. I'm sorry, I didn't notice that Cameron.
that's
wasn't
okay, no worries.
here. I think all of us should be here.
I agree. I think we
Yeah.
all should be here
Wait
and
till
make this
Wednesday.
decision, and out of respect for Paul and his group, I think that we should wait and review what they sent over.
Understood. I agree. Kind we're going to table this till Wednesday, 6:15? Actually, no, it'll be,
Actually, no, we'll have to,
Wednesday.
Be next Monday.
it'll have to be next Monday.
okay. The agenda for Wednesday's already set?
Unfortunately, I don't have the
Like-
48 hours notice.
It's
Oh.
too late.
I can revise the agenda for, We might have to do it as the first item at 6:30,
On Monday?
Wednesday.
Wednesday, okay. All right.
We don't have-
We can revise the agenda for Wednesday.
Okay.
Well, let us take a look at the statute and make sure that
Yeah.
we're good in either way.
Or we could
But as
do it
long as we
before.
have someone in place by coming next Monday night, we'll be in good shape.
Okay, sounds good.
Nothing, there was some preliminary matters that went to council, some holdovers from the fall. So we're in decent
we
shape
have
as
a-
long as we don't go past next week.
Okay, great. That's great.
Do we have a list of any other legal matters that may be with them, or is there just one?
can keep it running.
There are two in front of them, one of which is being
Don't stop
wrapped
it.
up and should be in front of this body within, it's being wrapped up. I don't know exactly when they'll have it. And then we have the litigation.
I think we should have a list of what's in front of them that they possibly
It's
need.
two items, but I'll have that. for you.
Okay, thank you.
Both are litigation matters.
Okay, thank you.
I gave them some.
Yeah, the business meeting itself should be adjourned. And then you're actually right on time to open up the,
Make a motion to adjourn the business meeting.
I have a motion to adjourn this business meeting starting at 6:15. To have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? See none. Diane?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Cameron?
Abstain.
John votes yes as well. And we can actually open up the new Board of Select meeting for tonight. Please rise. Yes.
Request,
He's going to run it through.
Has to.
It's okay.
Yeah, you can't.
Because there was really no decision made except tabling it, so no sense. If we can all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, that'd be great. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all for coming. Advisory Committee, thanks for coming. Appreciate it. Good seeing you.
wouldn't miss it.
I know you wouldn't, Jeff.
I'll miss Wednesday, but not tonight.
Yeah. Understood. And tonight we have Carter?
tonight we have fire is up first, followed by police, and then we're gonna speak to emergency management.
Okay.
And before we start, and you should have had a tab 11 in your book, we'll get that for you Wednesday night.
Yep.
Not quite sure what happened there, but we will have for you, and I know with the access to Vadar, the advisory committee is able to do this, but we will have printed out for you budget to actuals as of the end of the prior week, each time that you come in for a budget hearing for those who want to see that. As you know, we frankly don't spend a lot of attention to that, but I know that a lot of people do kind of like to try to see that and get
Understood.
that. We have some other paper for you that we'll be handing out as we go through, but Chief Dickey was first in the box, according to the schedule.
Great. Okay. Did you get a chance to look at the future meeting dates as well?
We will need to, and I don't know if you want to do this at the end, you want to talk about this a little bit up front. We do need to talk about potentially rescheduling your hearing of the 21st.
Yes.
So that there can be attendance at the schools. I do want to talk with you in general about what the approach to that is going to be.
We can talk about that at the end then. That'll be good. Okay, Chief Dickey, how are you, sir?
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Good evening.
See, you brought your staff with you, which is good.
I think bring a little backup symbol.
There's nothing wrong with that, Chief. There's nothing wrong with that.
We're all teamwork.
That's right. That's right.
Chief, if you give them the page numbers, that might help get them started.
I was wondering where they wanted to start.
Well, we can probably start, there's so much of it. Huh?
It's at page 99 is the start of
It
it.
is, page 99 is the start of it. Start with the, I guess, you wanna do budget explanations, or you wanna go right into the detailed budget that's on page 101?
Start at 101.
Maybe ours is probably labeled different from yours.
Shouldn't be.
Personnel?
Page 99 is your two-page memorandum.
It would be personnel,
I
yes.
think the chief just organized himself a little bit differently than the book.
So page 99 and 100 is just a, some of the descriptions of some of the stuff that's in the budget.
Mhm.
Beginning with, our structural firefighting gear. That's, the gear that's all the PPE that our responders wear, the firefighters wear, to go into fires, car accidents, and so forth. These items here, per NFPA, has a 10-year lifespan, where once they hit that 10-year mark, we're not allowed to wear them into a burning building anymore,
Mhm.
or take them to, for trainings as well at the academy. We have it in the budget now for, trying to do 5 sets a year. At the cap of my personnel at 50, that takes me right through updating without any of it shrinking because of age or being damaged, would take us, right through time frame of replacing it for everybody. And that's actually at a minimum, that would give everybody, one set. So if we had a major structure fire and it's gotta be washed and cleaned, which they are recommending nowadays due to cancer, we would not give anybody a second set.
Is this gear warranted as well, chief?
Does it get warranted?
Is it warranted at all?
Not against real damage.
Okay, understood.
I mean, we can get, it does cover a warranty, for minor things if it happens due to the manufacturing process.
But not by, I got
Yeah. I don't think they really make anything firefighter proof, to be perfectly honest.
Roger.
Can I
Yes.
insert here? I know this is several pieces of gear that make up this PPE, but based on the expense sheet, that looks like one unit would be over the $5,000 that should dump it into the capital. So again, paid for out of operating is fine, but the capital plan includes regardless of the funding source. So the funding source is your operating
So-
budget, but the item should be listed as,
How would you, each piece is purchased individually, you don't purchase it as a set for somebody, so the pants, the coat, boots, gloves, helmet, hood, all of those.
again, you could say, PPE, which includes these things,
Yeah.
and the cost is, whatever, 'cause you're replacing 5 of them
I
per
mean,
year.
it is if you, go into the capital expenditure point, on my capital list, it is actually listed out.
I just don't remember
My
us discussing it at
original
the
one was
meeting.
listed, it got removed.
So, and again, it's not a real topic for now, it's just a comment.
It's
Yes,
about
Mr.
$3
Tinsley.
grand for a full set, $32.50, but I do understand what Doug is saying, that although something may not trigger that 5,000, when it's replaced as part of a total comprehensive program, our apologies, we'll remember that for next year.
It's just an observation.
Yep, good catch.
No,
Right,
I understand.
continue, chief.
Moving down, our electronic software, we start with Image Trend. This is the software we use to do our patient care reporting for the EMS side, that we give our hospital reports. It goes to the state and also the billing company. Last year's budget, you might remember the software Ambrew Pro. This is a replacement of Ambrew Pro. We no longer use it. we've changed to Image Trend. This is it's a more user-friendly software package for us. It integrates with the state software for actually giving the information to the state. And it makes for billing also easier compared to AmbuPro. This cuts down on some of the man hours, person hours in the office to actually get the bills out the door and to report everything to the state. So we did something new, and this is what we decided on just for ease. We're also saving on paper with this, because with AmbuPro, we would have to print out our reports and fax them into the hospital. This I can electronically fax right to the hospital,
Okay.
so it's not an issue.
Yes.
So how long did you use AmbuPro for?
AmbuPro was our only one that we had ever used up until this year, so we used it for, 7 to 10 years.
Okay, that's fine. And, is this a yearly fee?
The software, for Image Trend, yes.
Okay.
Mr.
And-
Chairman?
and it's
Yes.
a-
Hold on one second,
Sorry,
go ahead.
So I see here at the last year's budget, AmbuPro was $5,248. Here you're requesting $5,200, and the town administrator doesn't seem like you budgeted anything for software in the current budget.
Well, before we get into all that, why don't we continue
can
with
we-
what he's doing as far as explanations, then we'll actually get into the budgets
Okay.
after that, if that's okay with everybody, so that we don't get confused by going back and forth. Go ahead, chief. Excuse me, Diane, you have something else to add?
Well, I just lost my train of thought.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right, I thought one person would just, it's fine.
Okay, go ahead, chief.
Okay, so the next down would be ePro Scheduler. This is an online scheduling software that we use to track hours worked. We can track training, and we use to schedule our employees. What this does is, allows our employees to, go online from anywhere and actually, request the shifts that they want to work. And we can track the hours they've already worked through this, so we can, make sure we have a fair process on, who gets what shifts.
Right.
It also has the ability with it that we put in all their training
I
and
missed it, okay.
mandated training, so if we had someone that slipped through the cracks and say missed a CPR class and they can't work without it, this scheduling would not allow us to schedule that person, so we have to move around them, and it sends reminders and so forth, so that it makes it easier for that portion.
Have you had that program last year?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
Next down, I'm responding, or IAR, as we call it. This is a software that, we use it, that, not everybody has a pager at home, so this actually gets set up so people can, it sends out a text message for when, we have a call. And it also, the responders are able to, either through an app or through a phone number, can say they're coming. So now, we're not just waiting to see who shows up. We can, the command personnel and dispatch can actually see on a computer screen of your phone who is coming and where they're going to. It also, with that, dispatch has the screen up. In dispatch, they can see what trucks we have out of service or in service, the personnel that are on duty, and if they're coming on a call or not.
Okay. And again, you had this,
that last year as well.
okay, that's the next question.
The next one down, IMC, this is a fire reporting software. It's used to track emergency calls and report them to the state. This differs from Image Trend, where this is on the fire side of the house. We track both EMS calls and fire, but this goes to a different section of the state. This goes to the Department of Fire Services. We track all our calls. This is something that, through the 911 grant, Chief Bennett was able to get us this year, but then we're responsible for the upkeep of it from that point on. Up until this point, we have been doing our tracking of fire calls on paper. We have reported our calls to the state on paper.
Okay.
So this will take care of everything electronically, It will help cut down on a huge amount of time in the office, on my end of it, for tracking the calls and sending them in. So this one here is new to us. We're actually in the process of starting it now. We've started, training on it now, because we're in the year that the police department have purchased it for us. So we started the training and hoping to have, I should start building that database with, my admin, this week or next week, because the connections are getting bad. Next down, the SCBA bottles. This is a continuing thing that we've been trying to, the bottles are only good for so many years, and we needed so many tanks, and we got a little behind the time with the town not funding it, but then we started getting on a plan a couple of years ago. We have, this here says 22 more tanks, but I was able to have 2 tanks that donated to the department, so down to 20 tanks that we actually need, which shows in the capital plan at 20. So we need those 20 tanks are actually expiring in beginning of 2018.
So, through the chair.
Yes.
So what is the real number or the correct number of tanks that are needed? Is it 22 or is it
20. It is 20. We did need 22 when this was developed. Since that time, I had 2 tanks donated to the fire department,
So,
brand new tanks. So when this here was donated, written, it was 22, but if you look at the,
capital
in the
plan.
back of the capital plan, it says
20.
20, because I was able to get that updated in time.
So I guess if I were to be on the capital planning committee, it would be 22. Yes, you had 2 donated, but long-term, it would be 22.
Long-term, yes.
So, because if I were to
Well,
look at this, I would say
long-term, it's
18.
not that. Long-term, it's actually like, it was either 54 or 56 is the actual number, 54 of them. 20 is the last of the tanks we need. Through the light department
So
and
could we add
everything, we
another
purchased some.
column perhaps? Am
There-
I not looking at
If you look
this right?
further down, there's more lines, so there's 5
Okay,
lines.
so thank you for the small heart attack,
Of,
and I won't ask any more questions about capital planning.
Yeah,
Mr. Chief, and,
There's
Okay.
5 lines because they're.
I'm sorry, well, I looked at 20 and then okay, I'm just gonna stop talking now.
okay.
Thank you.
So next up in the description is the ambulance payment. We have 1 more year of paying on our current first line ambulance.
Nope.
And at that point in time, we'd be looking, as you know, we have 2 ambulances in town. And at that point in time, once the newer one is paid off, the plan would be to go out and start looking at new ones to replace the older ambulance, so that we're not in a spot where we're over 10 years and coming into some high maintenance costs on one of our ambulances.
Understood.
Next is the defibrillator payments. Okay, this is the cardiac monitors that our ALS service uses in the ambulance. So these were purchased at the same time as the ambulance, and it was on a lease. We're in the last year of our lease program, so that payment will drop off, but that doesn't mean there could still be expenses after that with whatever is needed with the new ambulances. You know, the things change and the policies change with the state and things that we have to include, so the price of the ambulance and the equipment might go up. It won't be a defibrillator, but it could be another piece of equipment that I don't know they're gonna actually mandate that.
All right. Will Physio still bill you for any repairs and stuff like that as well?
We do have, built into the budget, not in, is a yearly agreement on that, so they come out and
Service it?
and they service it. And the actual agreement that was signed with them is not just a service, come out and, you know, tinker with it and fix it, but it's actually, it's the battery replacements, it's, if it breaks, it's covered.
Okay.
And that goes right to the point today. I had physio in the office today, looking at a problem with it, and they came in and fixed the problem and calibrated the equipment for us today.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
what is the life expectancy of a defibrillator?
The life expectancy per physio salesman today is approximately 8 years when they recommend you start looking at them. That being said, there's a lot of companies out there that have them 10 years or a little longer. We have the Life Pack 15, which is the latest and greatest right now, which is a few years old. They're not even looking for the next upgrade for a couple more years for that. So we do have, you know, I'm realistically looking at about the 10-year mark before we start looking at the D-50 again. I'm sorry, the monitors again.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next down, miscellaneous fire equipment and replacement. This is something new. If you look back in the past budget, there was no line item that said, for replacement of fire equipment. Our equipment is getting old. You know, we have, fire hose, fire, apparatus, not apparatus, sorry, appliances, our nozzles, distribution valves, all that stuff is getting old. We haven't bought anything new in a long time. Didn't really have anything, because I don't know what's gonna break and what needs to be replaced. So this is just a starting figure in my budget of $5,000, just something to, so there's something in there, so we're not robbing Peter to pay Paul in a different section of the budget when something happens. And just for a heads up, I did have a water intake valve on our engine 2, which is our primary engine in Baldwinville, finally died this year. That was just under $1,000 to replace this year. And just like the SCBA bottles, I was actually able to get that donated this year, so that was not a hit on the budget. But if I didn't get that donation, that was $1,000 I didn't have someplace in the budget to replace.
I got you.
So the medical supplies and narcotics, the numbers in my budget, these are estimates from averaging past years that we've used it and moving forward. Try to get, you know, a number in there. Maintenance of the apparatus, this did go up. Last year it was around $6,000. This year we moved it up. The stuff is getting older. Our equipment is getting older and more expensive to repair every year. I've had a bad year with the ambulances. They've been going out a little bit more. Not this current year, but last year, when I first came aboard, the chief's truck saw almost $4,000 worth of work just to keep it on the road. It needs $2,000 more right now just to get the sticker it needs in June or July. That's just the emergency brake system, so that's not even, you know, the tires are good, don't know what the brakes or anything else goes on. It had some body rot underneath. I had to have the running boards taken off of it and inspected at a body shop, and, you know, he told me as long as you took if I hadn't removed the running boards off that truck, it wouldn't have lasted another year. By taking those off, he's hoping it could get a little bit more if needed, but that's still $2,000, it's the emergency brake, $4,000 that I put into it last year, and any other breakdowns that might come up with it. For the increase in that area, I just had, you know, the ladder truck went in again this year to have work done. It came out fairly decent out of inspection with no major problems, but before inspection, we had to have a portion of it fixed. If you remember, a couple of years ago, we had the pumps fixed. This year, we had the main swivel that sends the electricity from the truck up to the ladder controls. Engine 1 just went in. I just got it back for $3,000 worth of repairs, and it's gonna go back in for about another $700, and to bring that up. And that's my newest engine in the fleet. And that did include the yearly fee, you know, the yearly service work to it this year, getting everything greased, oiled, and everything, but there was some other stuff that needed to get done to it. And then the last thing on my description list, the AEDs, automatic defibrillators. We have 12 of them, and we have to have a service contract on those. And they're actually not just all in the department. You know, I have some in my department, but we also have some in the cruisers. There's one at the senior center. We have one here at town hall, so they're spread around throughout the town as well.
Is that with physio too?
That's what physio is for.
And who's updating all the pads and pad replacements? Does those expire?
Yeah, they come in fact, I was talking to a salesman, just today, and, we're talking about, we could get get our yearly maintenance done on all of those as well.
Great.
So we're in the middle of scheduling that.
Thanks, Chief. Yes, Dana?
Are they in the schools? Are you responsible for the ones in the schools as well?
We have them in the schools, yes, but I've turned over the service contract pricing to the school. They actually paid for theirs in the school, but when it comes time to have them serviced, I'll take them out, have them serviced, and put them back in the school. But they actually cover the cost of it.
Well,
Okay, great.
all kind of comes from the same pot.
Excellent. Let's get into budget. Personnel. You guys okay with personnel so far? Yeah, you guys have any questions?
I do.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you have the FY 2019 administrator recommended figures?
I do.
Okay. Looking at personnel, it looks like 4 firefighter paramedics have been zeroed out.
Yes.
Okay. And so the plan is to go back to call EMS?
The way it was described to me is that right now I have 2 full-time firefighters, and we were supposed to bring 2 more on at the end of this fiscal year and continue them to bring our ALS service up to a 24-hour covered service. And the way I had decided to do this, it was gonna be 1 full-time firefighter paramedic on shift, 24/7. We had a daytime firefighter EMT right now that has to go and get his paramedic. So that would give me someone during the day to help out, so I don't necessarily have to go on all the calls, and I can still run the department. It has the firefighter paramedic there, 24-hour coverage, and then evenings and weekends, it would be supplemented with per diem staff or our on-call staff. But we would have 1 firefighter paramedic in-house 24/7, and then we would have somebody with them days. Evenings, it would be call people coming back to do
Okay.
the job with them.
And that would not jeopardize the ALS?
On my plan, no. On the administrator's recommendation, I
Yeah.
could not run an ALS service.
So we would not have ALS service based on the administrator's recommendation?
Correct.
Okay.
I need to be clear, you will not have BLS
Oh, yeah, we will not have ambulance at all.
unless the
There would
override.
be, under the administrator's recommended budget for my department,
Mhm.
the ambulance would be cut out. Everything that has to do with the ambulance, personnel, supplies, licensing fees, software,
Mhm.
everything like that has been cut out of the budget for the ambulance.
Unless the override were to pass, at which point
At which point then
the ALS would be
we would have
expanded
everything to my budget.
out to the 24/7 as you've proposed.
Without
and be
the
covered.
override, there would be no ambulance service.
Okay.
Back to the AEDs, Chief. How long, and you may have said it, but what's the life expectancy on those? Because I see there is an item, budget item in there for a service contract on them, those AEDs. I mean, they're like anything else, they have
We're
5 years.
still, the AEDs that we use is the Life Pack 1000s, and we have a few of the Life Pack 500s left. Those are more deemed on when you can't get replacement parts for them and they won't work on them anymore.
And then
The Life Pack 500s, we can't work on them anymore, so we still have a couple that are out in the field, but once we have a battery issue or something, those are out of service and we can't use them. The Life Pack 1000s are still going, and they haven't told me a date when they're gonna be out yet.
Offhand, do you know what they cost per?
Don't remember it was a bunch of years ago that actually the town, Chief Smith at the time and myself brought a budget article to the town, a warrant article to the town bought those separate.
I was just wondering if I mean, they can't be cheap, they ain't a $20 item. If there's a plan, I mean, if you have a life expectancy of them, and do we have a plan to fund them to replace them, say, 5 years, 3 years,
Because
whatever?
I don't believe those are.
Further out, and the salesman hasn't even told me when they're not gonna be, when we're gonna have to work on it yet. I haven't even, those aren't even into my capital plan.
Okay, so that's gonna be, you'll find out about it, and then
Yes.
be like a year or 2 out or something.
It'll be at least 2 years out before I start get those on the capital plan again. But yes, there will be warning.
And is there built-in, like, annual training with those things? I mean, I know they're supposed to be kind of simplistic, but,
The way the AEDs work is we have people in-house that get trained, that we have people that we have trained to teach CPR through the American Heart Association, and in that is the training to teach AEDs. So we have the ability, we teach our own people that, and we teach the community.
because I know it's one thing to have them hanging in town hall, but if it's the first time you look at them when you need them and you never had, it's a bad, I just wondered if you account for that.
It's actually taught in most CPR classes nowadays.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Just so we're clear here, so I know we had sat and discussed this. We were looking at a plan that we're saying on a 24-hour, we're talking with three shifts, 24 hours, with one paramedic, one EMT rolling with that, correct? And then we would have you and the deputy, I believe.
No, it's not the
During the
deputy,
day.
it's just right now it's a firefighter EMT,
Mhm.
along with myself, days.
Yep.
That is supposed to go to paramedic school,
Okay.
and then.
When you say supposed to, is that's not,
He's mandated to go to paramedic school.
okay.
So, and then, so after hours, after 5 o'clock, usually, the paramedic firefighter would be in the station by himself,
Mhm.
and then we'd be on our call staff to hear the tone and come out and help them. With that being said, we have my fire officers, which are all EMTs and/or medics. They're on a rotating shift from 6 PM to 6 AM, 7 days a week. So they do make up the second person if I don't have somebody else, one of the call person to come out. But
Okay.
we have the E-Pro that I was telling you about, the schedule, that's how we, not just our full-time people, it's our call people that we have that, so we know who is on, they bid on their call shifts, just like people bid on the paid shifts in the station.
Okay. And so with that being said, and we're looking at, totally releasing the entire firefighter EMS, or the EMS service, and the ALS service rather, because we won't have an ambulance at all currently under this plan. Now, what is the total price point of if we just completely clear this, and maybe Carter can speak to this as well, but if we completely cut that, we still need to have firefighter staff, correct? And we still need
First
paramedic staff?
responders.
First responders and that.
We are mandated to supply first responder to a call. So if you don't, anytime you have an ambulance going to a call, so like right now we have ambulances. So if if one of my people is responding to them that's an EMT level, they are responding at an EMT level. If I do not have a ambulance responding to a call, even an EMT is only operating at a first responder level, which is a step below. They can't do as much as an EMT.
Hmm.
So it wouldn't matter what my personnel training at that point. If I had a paramedic sitting in the station and both my ambulances are gone and that paramedic is gonna go to a third call we have, he's responding as a first responder
Okay,
because he's not part of an ambulance crew at that point.
okay. I see what you're
So if we don't have an ambulance service in town, all of my personnel are responding at a first responder level. And by the state service zone plan, without an ambulance service, we have to still respond.
Which
to
costs money,
emergency
correct?
medical calls to render aid until an ambulance can get there.
And that would cost
That
money.
would cost us money,
Mhm.
and we would have no revenue coming in because we would not be the billing party at that point. in
So do
time.
we know what the price would be if we cut the ambulance service completely, and then we would still have to respond to these calls? Do we have an idea of what that figure would be in total of
Well,
cost
I
if
mean,
this
at this
override
time-
doesn't go through?
the budget that I put in, and then the town administrator cut that out, it was $376,000 he cut out of the budget.
Yep.
To run the ambulance service. So everything else that's remaining in my budget, you'll still see in my expenses that there is, some money for, medical supplies and so forth like that. So
Yep.
all of that is still sitting in the budget, the administrative portion of the budget so that I can have some medical supplies, some medical oxygen, and so forth like that, and money to pay the call firefighters to go out on the EMS calls.
So that is factored into
It
this?
is factored into
Okay.
the administrative portion of the budget.
If I may, Mr. Ports, on page 101.
Yep.
You'll see about 5 lines up from the first open space from the asterisk,
Mhm.
EMS on-call salaries. The chief's original request was 15,000, assuming that the 4 career firefighter EMTs were funded. When that did not happen, that number had to be increased to $60,000.
Okay.
Then when you go through oxygen, medical supplies, some other things, you'll see that there is still some money left in there. You're also gonna see a couple months for ambulance billing to close out the fiscal year's billing. And then you will see the entirety of the year on the balance of the lease and the defibrillators, because you have that contractual obligation. So the base budget has been built carrying all of those items.
Okay.
And then in the override, we carry the differential. So for instance, when we get to the override, although it's $240,000 for wages, you're gonna see we've only asked for about 200, because then we can back out some of these items that we have to bulk up here.
And, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I see that it says here too that the chief wants 70,000 and you had placed 60,000. Do you want to speak to as to why you need 70,000 as opposed to 60,000 on that, or why you're requesting for that? Do you anticipate that it would cost more in cost volume?
The 70,000 was a really, when we first started looking at this, it was a really quick math, this is what I think I need.
Okay.
But then, then he gave me time to actually go look and say, okay, what's my call volume, what's the hourly rate, and so forth, and the 60,000 is workable at that point.
It's workable, but if we had an increase in call volume, I mean, that's based off the 750 calls.
Yeah.
If we went up to, say, 800 calls in that year, or 900 calls, what are we looking at for a cost?
Well, you're looking at the additional, for my firefighters, I look at, I have no way of knowing how many are gonna show up and how long the call is gonna be for. So my averages are about 6 people on a call for a fire call, a 2-hour average. So really, I don't know, are we gonna have a mill fire? Are we gonna have a fire to the point where I have personnel on there for multiple days,
Mhm.
investigations where I have to, if we have a fire, as long as I have control of the scene, I can basically investigate that fire.
Yep.
But if I leave that scene, now it comes to the point where I have to work with the police department, and we have to get warrants to go back on the scene.
Okay.
So typically, if there's any question at all about anything, we stay parked there.
Okay.
So how long do we stay parked there? That's all, none of that is really in here, it's just a base budget of.
It's indeterminable at that
Yes.
point. Okay. Thank you, Chief, I appreciate it.
Great. Does anybody have any for personnel? No, nothing, okay. We are moving on to employee support. Page 102.
So, and employee support, Doug, for you, you'll see the top items. Like the bunker coat, bunker pants, that's part of that PPE equipment, all the individual pieces, boots, the helmets, the hoods, so forth like that.
Okay.
You will see out of here that there's license renewals, the EMS license renewals has been removed. Basically, if we're running at a first responder level, there's no, I don't have the ability to help my people maintain their EMT certification.
Right.
And that's what that money is used for.
Along with your full-time employee clothing allowance?
Correct.
Anybody have any questions about the employee support advisory committee? Okay, see, no. You guys have anything? Purchase of services?
here is where a lot of cuts are coming from, because you're gonna see that,
Yeah.
you know, the software, the image trend is removed. The Verizon hotspots for the ambulances, which is with the new IMC software, it makes it a lot easier to have internet in the ambulances for IMC to work with image trend. And with that, we can use it. It's not a good idea to use it, try to use somebody else's, like at the hospital, something we want control of what we have for it. Ambulance license fees, ambulance service has been taken out. You will see under the administrator's budget, Microsoft email, I had asked for 4,800 and that was taken out. That actually has been moved over to the IT budget, that is still in place, so that's, right now, we're using a not very secure email service. So we really can't communicate with our personnel well. So with the Microsoft email, it really lets us nail down some of the securities with our HIPAA issues and so forth like that, better than what we're doing now. So that's why, if you looked at last year's budget, it was a much smaller number for our email. And the increase was to get the security we needed, but that's moved over to the IT budget. Miscellaneous ambulance repair has been zeroed out. Down near the bottom, the striker cot, stair chair service contract, that is, all of our big ticket items in the ambulance need to be checked annually, and the state tells us we have to have some sort of agreement with somebody, be it just an agreement where we pay them to come in and service it, and then we pay for parts and labor to fix it, or an agreement where everything is covered. So the one with the striker cot and stair chair service, those get used on every call. You know, we pick people up, second floor, basement, whatever, with the stair chair, get them outside, they're on the cot.
Right.
Those are, you know, we have them come in once a year, go through those things, soup to nuts, and take care of them to make sure they are up to date and serviceable. And then the ALS mutual aid charges in the bottom. What that is when we can't get a paramedic crew, if we have a second call going on, or if I don't have, as of right now, we have 16-hour coverage, so I don't always have an on-call person overnight where I can get a paramedic. If we have another ambulance service come in that provides a paramedic for us and transports with us, we are the billing agency and we have to pay them for coming on the call, and that's where the money is for that.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
I had a question, it relates overall to ALS. Wasn't the date April 1st?
Yes,
You had to have 2 more people come on?
yes, and
Okay.
I'm hoping through the rest of the fiscal year to work that with, not necessarily full-time people that would get benefits and everything. I'm trying to work it with per diem people that they can't work. We can only average 19 hours a week, so basically I can get them on a 24-hour shift about every other week, and maybe a couple hours here and there. I do have a couple of on-call paramedics that I'm trying to get in the mix with more regular hours. I have a couple of fire officers that are paramedics, so I'm trying to help out and not necessarily go after the, all the costs to put 2 full-timers on now with the uncertainty of the future of this.
Mhm.
We definitely have to have them long-term, long-term, because per diems are hard to work with. I would need to have so many of them, because this is not their primary job, that if they don't show up, they don't show up. If they decide they wanna take a month off from all their other jobs, I don't really have any backbone to do anything about it, so.
Okay.
For the remainder of this year, where this is such an uphill battle to make sure to see where we're gonna stand next year with it,
Mhm.
I'm working with trying to do the job with per diems and on-calls and so forth.
Okay, so from April 1st to June 30th, that's the
Yeah,
plan
my
to
plan
get
is,
through.
we're going 24 hours by April 1st. I'm moving forward with that plan, because that's what the state, we had agreed with the state. So as long as we're moving forward, I am moving forward with the agreed upon plan.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
does the state say how you have to accomplish that, or
It does
just that you
not.
have to accomplish
It
that?
does not, it just says that we have to
Thank
have
you.
24-hour service.
Okay. That was a good question, Julie.
Mr. May?
Yeah, hi, Chief, how you doing? Just had a question here on your request and on the administrator's request. I know it's $3,000 for the chief's truck service and repair. And I know on the administrator's report was scheduled to purchase a new truck for the chief.
Mhm.
So I was just wondering if that $3,000 was still required for the budget, or if it was just an oversight if that didn't happen, or
Well,
what the-
under my budget, when I came to capital planning, the chief's truck and a replacement engine was the top of my capital plan. But I did not move either of those forward on the capital plan because, when it was explained to me that there was some money that was coming off the tax rolls, that was a continuing funding source that had been used for capital, because it wasn't a one-time funding source, my request actually was to roll that into services instead of vehicles for us, and to help offset the need for an override. We desperately need the vehicles. Like I said, my chief's truck is, I put $4,000 into it, it still needs another 2,000. So 2008 is a primary response vehicle. The engine that is on the capital plan to replace is it's 30 years old, it's 1987. And it needs continuous work. In fact, I have to have the pump worked on it now. So it's not that the equipment isn't needed, it is desperately needed. But it was my opinion that it was more important to provide the ALS service, and my opinion was I thought that by taking some of the money off of a proposed override might help the chances. That I thought trying to put that into my operating budget would be a better solution. Doesn't help the capital expenditures of the department and the needs, but it keeps the service moving, and ALS to the community, to me, was a much higher priority.
Thanks, Chief.
You must have anything else?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
So I have two questions. The first question, I believe, is a service that we're offering, or software service that you're gonna be offering this year, which is it IMC?
Yes.
So I know that's supposed to save you some time because we're manually submitting these and tracking these calls, correct? And the IMC is supposed to take care of that and making this electronic. Is that correct?
It helps, it doesn't eliminate anything. We still have to do everything, all the inputting to it.
Yep.
Right now, to stay compliant with Massachusetts to get grants, you have to report fires that give you a property damage, or if it gives you a loss of life or an injury to life, be it either a firefighter or a civilian. So, to stay online with, like the SAFE grant and so forth, it really only means less than 20 reports a year. But to go to the national level and be able to go after the SAFER grants and the firefighters assistant grants and so forth like that, they want to capture all your calls,
Okay.
what you're doing. You have to have your specific call in specific categories, and this would help with that. We're compliant to get the SAFE grant, but we're tracking 1,000 calls a year was not being done in the past.
Okay.
This will help bring us to where we should have been years ago and need to be.
Okay. Thank you for that answer. And my second question is, so I see that there's coastal medical billing still here for $5,000 in the town administrator's revised version of the budget. If we do away with the ambulance service entirely, what is the need for the coastal medical billing?
Okay, with the coastal medical billing, they get a percentage of the calls. So we're going to be billing right up until July 1. We'll run that ambulance service right up to June 30th.
Mhm.
It takes 90 days to get
Oh,
a
I see.
majority of your calls. That $5,000 is just to run for a few months so that we can honor our commitment.
July,
to
August, and
postal.
September.
If we don't do that, they don't bill the calls for us. We lose even more money.
Okay, that makes
Um,
sense. So this is just carrying the contract.
It's enough to try to wrap up.
Because if you look,
Still.
my budget number for that is 16,800, that's for the entire year.
Yep, divide that by
And
12 and you
So the
have,
5,000 is just to try to get us a few months so that we can
Okay.
capture the remaining fiscal, this fiscal year's, money coming in.
Gotcha.
thank you, chief.
Yes, Drew.
I had a question about how much money is left in the ambulance receipts reserved account.
Okay, I don't know that, Kelly? you-
It's right at just a little over 200,000 right now today.
Okay, and where does that show up on the expenditure ledger?
Yes, it should show, if you look down at the 2020 account. May not reflect the revenue, I just posted some today. So do you have that on there?
Yeah, I'm looking on page 5.
Okay, I just haven't added that in there. I can do that for the next report, because it's not able to be spent, so I just have not put it on loaded the information.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I
Yes.
may, that brings us to an extremely important point that I don't want to be lost over the coming 2 years. We have projected the use of $250,000 towards this budget to support if the override does not pass. The balance that's on hand as of roughly the town meeting would support next year's budget. However, even after the collections for the last number of months in the fiscal year, you will only have about $125,000 left next year. So there's an automatic $125,000 hole next year. And with no billings occurring in fiscal 19, there will be a $125,000 hole occurring in fiscal 21 as well. So there are some substantial financial negatives beyond just the service itself to the larger organization if the override does not pass. And I think it's extremely important that people know those other two negatives are sitting out there in 20 and 21.
And that'll be about $125,000 per year.
Yep.
Actually, I have it a little higher than that,
You
actually.
do, what do you got, chief?
Based on my reports from Coastal, in FY 17, the ambulance brought in $282,501.45. Okay, that was for the complete fiscal year. So far, fiscal year 18, 8 months in, I've got credits into the account of $213,098.57, puts me over $26,000 a month. Based on that, I'm estimating that we will bring in this fiscal year $319,647.85. So we're using the 250 number because of past issues of, like, we had to take 100,000 out in the fall meeting to use for this year. If everything were to work out and we had our budget to move forward with ALS, okay? Carter has us going with the 250 number, which would lock us in with this year. But I predict that we'll have even a little bit more extra than that, because we've got, like we said, we got about another 100, 125 that we're thinking. And like I said, I'm looking at 319,000 bringing in this year. So, yeah, down in 30, 250 in a couple of years would be the deficit number again. But I'm really looking at, if I'm bringing in 319,000 this year, that's the real deficit number in 2 years, because I won't be bringing in that much money.
Understood.
I think,
Yes.
may I speak?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the other thing is the world is changing, and you have career firefighters who are paramedics and EMTs, and that you can't just leave your job anymore to say, oh, there's a fire, I'm leaving. It doesn't work that way. It's not,
Right.
life is not how it was. I'm sorry, I'm gonna date myself, back when I was little. It's just, it's not that way. So losing ALS means we're going to lose firefighters as well. And we need our firefighters. And we need our ALS. And losing ALS means we lose it all. So it's not just, oh, well, we're gonna lose an ambulance service. No, we're gonna lose some firefighters that we've had here for a long period of time because they're looking to move up, and this is their life. This is their livelihood. So that's a big piece of it as well. And we don't, I don't go out to fires. That's not my job. I don't know how many people show up all the time, but again, you can't just leave your job any longer. So yes, we will have a larger deficit, and we will have, that's just my thought too.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
There was somebody that reached out, and they, Carter had taken an email and he had forwarded it to me, and the comment was, why don't we just go back to a, private ambulance service like we used to have? And Julie can actually attest to this. I mean, I got on over 26 years ago, and we had a volunteer rescue squad. Julie, it was
Oh, I remember.
years before that, okay? Now, it was free back then because we raised money, but I remember quite a few years, as some of the people in the back, the crowd will remember as well, we knocked on the door of every resident in town.
Yes.
To keep that a free service to the person getting the service back then. But if you're really looking at, and I hate to use the analogy, but if we're knocking on the door and getting donations, that was really a tax, because everybody was paying it. So, it just wasn't a billing service. Who were we saving back then? We were saving the insurance company's money back then.
Right.
So, we've not, as long as I've been in this town for over 26 years, we've had an ambulance service, and there was great pride in that. And back then, that was the beginning of the ambulance service industry. Went from being thrown in the back of a police car to just driven to the hospital and dumped off, to a bright truck, to actually getting your first ambulance and going forward. So I don't know if there ever really was a time that town of Templeton had any other ambulance service besides its own.
That's correct.
Mr. Chairman?
One second. You go ahead, Doug.
So I agree, the ambulance service is vitally important to our community. So we all have a responsibility, I believe, to, promote and educate why we really need the override. I mean, I would just hate that we would lose this valuable service. So, I think we all have to, do our best to educate everyone that, we're not asking for the override just to be asking. There's a real need for it, and the community is gonna suffer for years to come if we deny it. So, that's, I will do my part to try and, help and
Me too.
educate, but I think, I don't know what else we can do.
Yes, Cameron. Thanks,
I'll
Ben.
save my closing remarks on this whole thing till the end, because I want to go through this, but do you think
Can you speak up a little bit? She can't hear you.
Oh, do you think you could submit, and Eric, could you copy those numbers that you were reading for your projections? I don't have that in front of me, so I just wanted to see where you're
No,
getting at.
that's I get a report from Coastal every month that
Kelly has
shows
it.
where the money comes from, and then
Okay.
I also get, credits and adjustments and all that sort of.
Do you think you could copy that right now and real quick? And then, just so I can see that before I make any
Thanks, Eric.
rash decisions.
Well, notwithstanding the income stream, I will say that the bottom line is that DLR has told you you cannot appropriate any more than you have in the account
That's
on the
right.
town meeting.
Mhm.
And last year we did that, and we ended up having a pretty heavy debate at the annual meeting.
Mhm.
Then when we backfilled it, we had it all over again.
Right, like why are we
So
doing
the
that?
theory here is to,
Yeah,
one,
do it again.
satisfy DOR, not have the debate at the Springtown meeting,
Please.
not have the debate all over again at the Fall Town meeting,
Correct.
and to build up some reserves in there. As a, for instance, when you go to buy your next ambulance, you're not gonna replace it for the $40,000 lease payment you have here.
Right.
That will give you an opportunity to have built up some cash to buy that down, so you can stay within a lease payment that's maybe $45,000. So do I think the chief will raise 325 plus or minus every year? Yeah. Do I think we should use it in the budget? No.
I'm also working with the state. There's a program, and the name escapes me, and I forgot to print it when I came here tonight, PCG or something like that. Municipal ambulance services can, basically, they have some classes you can go to, and then they require some reporting on your back, and they try to help you get some of that Medicaid money back. It's not a great deal amount, you know, 5 to 10 grand maybe, from what I'm understanding, this town might be up for, but that doesn't, I can't even get into that. I talked to the state today, the classes aren't even until end of August, September, and then all the paperwork is due by the end of October for that program. But that's another little bit of funding that you're trying to make work, to help bring in a little extra money as well.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if there's no more questions on the base budget, I would like to turn to page 272.
Yep.
Excuse me. Actually, page 321, tab 9. And we have some revised pages to give you here, and I'll explain to you what they are in just a moment.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
First, let me say that this does not have to be the only way in solving the budget gap. It is my recommendation. If there are alternative methods or alternative overrides, certainly you're the policy body. Secondly, I've asked the chief to put together kind of an FAQ, a flyer that starts to explain to people the what and whys and where we're at. In that conversation, an interesting question came up this morning asking if everything was fully loaded. So the sheet that we've just handed out does two things. First, it explains that the costs are not fully loaded. Unemployment and Medicare is not in there, and that's about $4 grand roughly. So I want to explain to you how we came to the number. The theory here is that we spent quite a bit of time discussing with chief, with others, as to what they thought could be sold to the public. What number is it at which you can talk with your neighbor, someone you work with, someone in the store, tell them what the number is, tell them what that costs the typical house, and they would say, that doesn't sound too bad, because you have to be able to get it approved. Bottom line is, it has to be voted for at a general election. And that number that was tossed around and kind of settled upon was a maximum of 60 cents per thousand. That's what different people that I spoke with thought was the maximum that could get approved. So on a $250,000 house, that's $150. The average house in town, if you take the LA4 report, is $200,000. That's $120. So that's exactly what we did. We took 60,000 and we backed right into it. We need $200,000 in personnel, and the way that we get that number is we take the chief's initial request of roughly that's on page 322. We take the chief's initial request of about $496,000 in the base budget. That would have been approved at roughly $495. We take out the base that's in there, $295. We need $200,000 more to fill that gap. On the page 323, we put back in the full-time employee clothing allowance, some physicals for new hires, and the EMS license renewals. On 324, all those things the chief spoke to that have been reduced in the entirety or partially, the monies have been restored here to cover those. And I'm not gonna belabor it page by page, item by item. And then we took on, what you'll see this revision page, the second page of what I gave you, we just cleaned up the presentation of it. You have about $112,000 in benefits for these 4 firefighters. Between medical insurance, dental insurance, life insurance, and 23% that you'll get hit for. Not this year necessarily, but next year and the year after, because the Worcester Regional Retirement System, we pay on this kind of assessment as opposed to most other employees where they would just say, send us 23%. But you need to be ready for it. It's gonna hit you next year.
Right.
Or the year after. So that came to right around $380,000. We backed out the 1,300. We made an assumption we'd figure out how to eat the unemployment and the Medicare costs, and that's how we came to the 60 cents. I'm not saying it can't be a little larger. I will say that that's the number that was pretty common agreement, was realistic, to have a conversation with the community.
Understood.
I will say on overrides, and I've asked Ms. Harris, she's put together a research for me of all of them, right back, general override, X, loses. My experience has been that overrides need to be fairly tightly focused, and that overrides for, just because you don't have enough money, tend to fail. And you really have to have what becomes a political discussion of not necessarily what you need, not necessarily what you want, but what do you think you can go to the voters and have that conversation with. So we give you those 2 revisions. They don't change the bottom line numbers. They do clean up presentation, and they do make sure people are aware that there's some costs that still have to be absorbed in the general budget.
Understood. Yes, Joey?
Is this override just to support fire EMS?
Yes,
So it doesn't include any capital override for a fire truck or
no, the only time
police station?
that sometimes will be, I mean, if the board decides to go for something different, I can explain what happens in that event, but this override, as you can clearly see, it's for the fire department, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 accounts in the fire department, and it is for the insurance and benefit account. Initially, when there was, $2,000 floating around, we were gonna look at snow and ice to keep it rounded off. But no, this is fire EMS only. As I have proposed it, but I wanna be clear, I proposed this body of these 5 folks in the end dispose of what our ideas are after they've included their own thoughts and discussion.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I gotta say this is ludicrous. I think we're holding the fire department hostage here with this override, and frankly, it makes me feel uncomfortable. We're at the point where we're taking this service, which is ALS, and we're riding on the gambling fact that the town people are gonna show up and approve this override. But the fact of the matter is, if they don't show up, we lose this service. And we're not dealing with education, we're not dealing with public safety, we're dealing with people's lives. And if we lose this service, we're increasing response time, we're losing out on having paramedics be the first responders, we're losing out on so much with this, gambling on the fact that people are gonna show up for an override. I'm not for it, I'll frankly say that right now, and we treat this as as an enterprise fund. That we're supposed to go out there and make money off people getting sick or needing ambulance rides and all of this. But the fact of the matter is that these receipts are here to cover the ambulance service, not the personnel. The personnel are supposed to be the paramedics and the EMTs that are supposed to be manning that. We're not covering it. That's a benefit to Templeton to have these people there. And to gamble this override and gamble people's lives on this service, it's disgusting. It's one of the most disgusting things I've ever heard.
Thank you. Thanks, Kim. I'm not gonna disagree with you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if I may,
Yes,
back to the override. I was on the board of selectmen when, I think the last override in Templeton passed.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that we went about, and I'm just throwing an idea out to, think ahead a little bit, or to maybe how to approach it. My personal thought at that time was $1 million override. We needed 500 and, I think it started at 6 something. We ended up needing like 505,000 or something for the school. And then we ended up proposing, an extra $140,000 to restore hours that were taken from non-union administrative personnel. And I know Diane was at least at one of those meetings that we held 3 informational meetings to try to talk to people why we needed the override, what the money was going to be used for. We held them at the Kiva, and one of the most attended meetings, sadly, there was like 30 people. That's including the selectmen, the secretary, the town coordinator, the guy filming the meeting. But we had three informational meetings, and we just had department heads come in, talk about why we needed the override, what it was gonna go for.
Right.
And it took us, I think we spent like 45 minutes. Actually, we started with $1 million, and the minimum that we needed was 505 for the school, something like that. And then we just kept banging around numbers till we agreed on the 2 things that we thought were important and that we could get. Like I said, a lot of people didn't show up. Maybe more people watched than not, but.
And that override
just
passed,
as a
right?
thought too, but the override passed. It was,
Yeah,
there were
passed.
9 that were
School.
tried in the state, and Templeton was the only ones that passed. So to Doug's point,
About the school?
we should, I mean, you know, do something to try to tell the people straight up, this is what the money's gonna go for, this is why it's needed,
That was for the
and
school.
this is what we need.
Was that for the school, or was that for the police officers?
That was for the school and to restore hours of non-union, because in 2012, the budget was cut, because they tried to use
Right.
money, they couldn't, and those are the ones that got the hit.
Okay. Well,
And-
obviously when,
To put those hours back, that was something we piggybacked on there.
Mhm.
We just told people straight up, this is what we thought we should do for the town employees, and to get that money back, because a lot of town employees stayed, they didn't,
Understood.
leave. And that was just an approach that we took, and I don't know if it would work again, but we just made the case. I mean, we had tried to get employees to come there, highway, police, fire, everybody.
well, we, obviously,
Got what we got. But that was one approach, and like I said, out of 9 overrides that year in the state, in that fall time period, Templeton's the only one that passed. So it can be done, it's just straight with the people. and make a good
absolutely.
Case.
Honesty is the best policy.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead.
I don't want to stay here that, have no solution, because I know the issue is that we have the ALS, and that's what we need for our, to put up for an override. I'm a huge proponent of, the public safety, which is DPW, fire, and police department, right, and then the education. Everything else in my mind is a luxury service, and if we want to put something and gamble it out there, I mean, we need to look at considering shuttering government if we need to in Templeton, which is the Council on Aging, which is recreation. I don't know if Scott Dill's here, he probably wants to beat me up after this meeting, but we need to put these on the line and go up and come up with this override amount here, which is $376,000, and put that on the line and gamble that to an override. I cannot see that this going well. And if that's the case, if we put that up for the $376,000 there, if people don't want it, they have spoken and we shut it down. We shut it down for the year and let them, I think in your words, and I think they quoted you, was feel the pain. And that would be my alternative solution to this, is that we put it in other services that we don't really want to lose, but we would still be in a comfortable place to lose. We wouldn't be in a comfortable place if we lost ALS.
Yes, Mr. Tanzini.
They are at risk. The school district has asked you for $485,000, $335,000 more than this budget is based upon. You still don't have Monty Tech's number.
Mm-hmm.
Every department is at risk.
They're all those other things, and they don't come to 335. Those are at risk as well.
Are we dealing with potentially people's lives is the concept here. If we lose the ambulance service, we can't get it back. It's a one-time license. That's what I'm suggesting here. This is a huge gamble that you're trying to take. And I don't feel comfortable. It does not sit well with me that we're gambling with people's lives in this situation.
And that will be the vote of the board at the end of the day.
And that's most certainly will, but that is my standpoint.
I got it, but you're right, Carter. And I get what you're saying, Cameron. I support you, and I support AOS as well. But unfortunately, when tough decisions have to be made, But again, not that I want to go in depth any further of Chief, because you know how I feel about fire service, you know how I feel about the AOS service, and how important that is, and having that, pretty much that ER at your back door, and the response times, which are really pretty decent here. And the fact that the services, the AOS services that we provide, should have things, could have, should have, would have, of course. The rates changes should have been done sooner, a business plan should have been done with the past chief. There's a whole bunch of what-ifs could happen, but the bottom line up front now is we're dealing with a pretty large deficit that we need to look at going forward, and how are we gonna fix it, and how is the townspeople gonna understand and realize the safety and security that we have in this community based on our fire department. And it's gonna be a challenge. It's gonna be a challenge. It's a challenge with this, it's a challenge with the Narragansett Regional School District. It's a challenge in every other department, to include library, library and Council on Aging and Parks Recreation and, Mr. Dill's organization and Cultural Affairs and, cutting veteran services in half. You name it, every other department in this organization in this town will be touched come some way, somehow, if things aren't done in a strategic way, in an educated way, that the people understand. The people voted for AOS by ballot vote. This is what the people wanted, and this is, hopefully, we're gonna fight to maintain that type of service. But how are we gonna get there? Because all the other ancillary parts of the community are gonna be hit just as well, and just as hard, if not worse. So, I applaud Chief's efforts, I really do. It's a tough position to be put in. You have a good plan going forward, at least till the end of the fiscal year. And then hopefully we can get the word out and educate the people, along with the advisory committee, supporting and, the decisions that are going forward. And we all have to work together. We all have to play in the same sandbox. This is our town. Nobody else, it's ours. So if this is our town, then we need to all come together. All of us, not just us at this table or the advisory committee or the other groups and committees and chambers, but also the townsfolk. They need to understand and realize what we have. As minimal as it might be, we have a fantastic service here. All right, can we move on? What do we got next, Carter?
That's basically it, and I would just like to make one last point. The timing is unfortunate, because the decision of whether or not to go to ALS service, unfortunately, the subject of that override would have been better done before the service was started.
Right.
I believe that for the fire department, the only other two items in the capital budget, we have two pieces of equipment. The most important is there's $95,000 in debt that went off the books this year with the last payment of 252 Baldwin. We are proposing to use a small amount of cash to buy the lease down, and to then enter into a 6-year lease on the replacement of a 1980 7 engine. And if that 92.5 then stays in the budget on the capital side, that will allow you to replace one piece of apparatus every 6 years. It sounds great until you realize 6 pieces of equipment on 6 years is 36 years. This stuff has a maximum life, to me, as a bean counter, 25 years. To NFPA, they'll tell you far less than that. The other thing is there's a wrinkle in trying to replace it every 6 years, even if you could do that. You have a year in which the ladder truck is about a $500,000 bump up above everything else. So in an ideal world, you would be putting aside $200,000 to $225,000 every year to replace just fire equipment. And I'm not talking about bunker gear and
Right.
everything else. This is a start of trying to work towards a systematic, sustainable replacement plan. It's a far cry from perfect. It's a far cry from good. But it is better than where you are right now. And I just wanted to remind folks how that it's there and that's how it's being paid for.
Right. Thanks, Carter. Advisory Committee, have anything else to add for the chief?
Thank you,
Comments?
Chief.
No, just, I said my stuff on the override.
Okay. Anything else have anything to add?
Well, so, Mr.
You
Chairman.
good?
Thank you to the fire department for all that you do. Absolutely.
One other comment just to make. I want to thank the North Central Community Group. They went out, along with their sister group, with Yeshova, and purchased 14 physio-controlled Lucas chest compression devices. These come at a state bid price of around $15,000 each, and Templeton Fire was the lucky recipient of one of them. So that is actually one of the items on my my capital plan was for 2 of them, one for each ambulance. They're a true life-saving device, and it's a huge thank you to them that we were able to get one of these devices at least 1 to 2 years earlier than hopeful capital plan. So,
Great job, Chief, on that.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
John, and you.
all yours now that I got riled up.
Hey, Chief.
Chief Bennett, how are you?
How are you tonight, John?
Fantastic, good to see you.
So we're gonna jump right into this, or we're gonna wait for Carter and Diana to come back?
Yeah, why don't we,
Call 5.
yeah, I'm gonna take a 5-minute recess.